I'm a writer. I write novels. I came to the United States for graduate school, and I have degrees in economics and operations research from the University of Delaware. And that's what I was going to do for the longest time, and until I decided I wanted to be a writer, and I wasn't going to write short stories, and I wasn't going to write articles or letters to the editor, nothing short. I was going to write a novel, and that's pretty much how I started. I didn't have any training for it. I didn't have a formal education in writing. I bought a computer and I wrote a novel, and then I wrote another novel, and then I wrote The 20th Wife and The Feast of Roses, the novels that are actually published now. I had to work quite hard to recreate India, living here as I did in the Pacific Northwest when I was writing The 20th Wife and The Feast of Roses, which are novels based on the life of one of the empresses of India, and she was variously responsible for the building of the Taj Mahal, and she lived in 17th century India. And most of the novels are set in Delhi and Agra during the summer months, where the temperature can reach a good 120 degrees in the shade if you're lucky. And so for me, the biggest challenge was really sort of trying to recreate 17th century India, an Indian summer, living in the Pacific Northwest, you know, with it's cold and it's dark and it's dreary and the sun sets really early and it's raining all the time. And so I would crank up the thermostat in the apartment, and you know, to about 85 degrees, and then write in shorts and a t-shirt because it was just so hot inside the apartment. And you know, I had other mood-setting tools. I remember at one point even hearing a car outside would sort of dislocate me from India, because I was really in 17th century India. I couldn't have the phone ring. There were no phones at that time, and so over time I sort of learned that to get myself into the story and to provide an authentic atmosphere, I really had to sort of switch off all these toys that beeped in the house, and just shut out everything until you got into it. And when I started off telling Mehrunisa's story, it was just, I was fascinated by this woman and I wanted to communicate my fascination to readers. And nobody else was writing about her. In some senses, her voice had been lost for 400 years. And as much as she had done, and as powerful as she was, and as much money as she had, and as much as she built a lot of monuments in India, she built her father's tomb, she built her own tomb, her husband Emperor Jahangir's tomb, and these all still stand today. Her father's tomb actually is sort of the predecessor to the Taj. And so if she hadn't built that tomb, you wouldn't have seen the Taj Mahal the way it is today. It might still have existed, but it wouldn't have looked like this. When I was trying to piece together her story and find out who this woman was, who is so powerful and yet is relatively unknown, apart from the fact that she's known for the great amount of love that Jahangir had for her, but there was a lot more substance to her, and she was more than just a beloved. And when I was trying to find that substance about her, a lot of the accounts that exist in either 18th century manuscripts or a little earlier than that are all sort of, they think of her as sly and cunning and grasping, and all she did was try to be like a man in what was essentially a man's world, and she was vilified and she was slaughtered in documentation for that, because she didn't fit the norm of Indian womanhood. If there's a message in The 20th Wife and The Feast of Roses regarding love, well, it's that the person you love is the person you trust the most, I think. That's really the way Jahangir's love for Mehrunisa manifests itself. She's the person he can trust the most. She's the person whose counsel he most listens to. It doesn't matter to him that he lives in a time when men are more dominant. Even during his reign, when people start realizing that it's really her voice that directs the empire, he has one of his ministers goes up to him and says, "What will future kings think? I mean, what kind of a man are you if you allow a woman to rule? You know, you're not enough of a man if you do that." And yet he was enough of a man not to worry about it. He loved her, he trusted her, and she was intelligent, and he recognized that in her. This is the most important thing that you would come away with, the fact that if the object of your affection is worthy, then they're worth everything.